Hello fellow readers, this is Mona Lisa and welcome to my channel Mona Lisa Reads. Today I'm finally going to be doing the video that I discussed in my booktube newbie tag and in a couple of other videos. This is going to be my discussion and thoughts on the following books: Neverwhere and Ocean at the End of the Lane. I have very mixed feelings about one of them, and the other one I enjoyed. And I'm sure by the way I discuss them, you'll figure out quickly which one is which. I'm also going to throw in a third Neil Gaiman book, which is Coraline, that I went and read on Halloween. I almost said like 3 different other holidays. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I do want to say before I get any further into this video, I do know that I am off center, and there's a reason for it. I didn't want to try to squish a picture of the cover or how I'm ranking these videos or these books on, one side of me. I just wanted to give more space to give more information about the books. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So I know what I'm doing. Kind of, sort of, maybe. We'll see. Okay, there are specific items that I want to talk about with each book. They are the following, and I have my cheat sheet, so if I'm not looking there, I'm reading. So I want to talk about the plot of the books, the characters, the world building, the pacing, the ending, and my enjoyment of each book. I'm going to quickly say, as far as the prose, I felt like prose was pretty standard across the board. It's written by the same author, and I don't feel like he did much changing of his prose. He's very descriptive for the most part in all of his books, or like the way he gives information is all the same, and I don't feel like it differed a lot. I feel like because it is the same author, there wasn't much difference in all of that information. Another quick thing I want to discuss are the covers. Now, I do have this copy of Ocean at the End of the Lane. It has the blue-green look to it, which kind of gives an oceany feel. I see it, but honestly, it is not my favorite cover. I've noticed with a lot of his books recently, he's done that watercolor, and I can see with some of them how I can see the picture they're trying to draw about the book, but I don't feel like it's really giving a good view, a good look at what's in the book. And they say don't judge a book by the cover, but obviously as humans we do. A book can have a gorgeous cover, but the storyline, the character building, the world building, the story in itself can be horrible. Yet a book with a not so excellent cover can really have an excellent story within its pages. So for me, these covers, I feel, let me back up. I feel like a cover should somewhat give you an idea of what the book is about. And I feel with these watercolor covers, they're not doing a whole heck of a lot of that. So I'm going to show you my favorite covers for each of these books. Here first is The Ocean at the End of the Lane. I just kind of like where it's kind of creepy, but it's kind of peaceful, dark and mysterious. And I do feel like that is a good, strong component of this particular book. Neverwhere is a lot of fun. Here's Door, here's your rats playing part in the book, and you've got that kind of tunnel system going on. I think this gives a good hint of what you're going to find in the book. The girl, Door, she's mysterious, she looks tough, she looks like she's been through some stuff, and she has. So I think the cover reflects this well. And with Coraline, this doesn't quite give the feeling as much of the creepiness that can be felt in this book, but I think it's a good picture of the setting in which the book is set. It's at her home, she's outside, there's the cat that does play a role within this book. The one thing I do have to say about this cover that I'm disappointed in is that in the book, she puts on yellow or orange boots. I can't remember one, it's right here. And the cover doesn't reflect that. I wish that it did, because that's part of the story. and obviously the artist took some liberties and Neil Gaiman was okay with it. So it's not like a huge thing, but it was just kind of disappointing to be reading the book and then realize the cover has a completely different color of shoes. It's a minor detail, and it didn't really take me out of the book, but it was just disappointing that it wasn't there. Okay, so cover's over. Let's now talk about plot. So, first one up is Ocean at the End of the Lane, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the book here. But basically the plot is there's a little boy or actually, at the beginning of the book, there's a man and he's going back to his hometown for a funeral. Don't know whose it is. And he decides to go by where his house used to be. It has since been developed into like lot homes. And he feels compelled to go to the house of a little girl that lived next to him named Letty and to go to this pond in the backyard. And he starts to remember things from a certain period in his childhood that involved Letty, and long story short, he kind of lets some badness out into the world and they have to fight it, and Letty's mother and grandmother are there involved, and he just slowly remembers things from this time period. And I can't remember who goes out and meets him at the pond. It was either the mother or grandmother, and they're talking, and he just remembers things slowly, and he remembers how things were resolved. And it's interesting because he doesn't seem to remember this incident when he's away living life. But when he comes back home, and he does so every so often, he remembers the incident. So that's kind of an interesting little aspect to it. I'm not going to tell you how it ends, obviously, but that's the basic plot of the book. Neverwhere. Neverwhere is a fun book where there's a Richard Mayhew living in London above, and he's living life. He's got a job. He's got a fiance who I don't like at all. And one day they're going to go have dinner with her boss, and a woman literally falls out of the a door. And this person's name is Door. What about Door? Door lives in London below, which has its own little, it lives in the sewer system and in the old tunnels, and there's a whole opposite world down there. And they have their own way of living and the way they think. And Door, is in trouble. Her family has been killed. Not a spoiler. Happens, you find this out early in the book. And she is now being chased as well. So she's just trying to stay alive, find out who killed her family, and get revenge. And to be able to live safely and no longer be chased. So when Door arrives in London, in front of Richard Mayhew, he takes care of her, and then chaos ensues. And there's these two creepy guys that are involved, and they are fun. I will have to say they were fun. I don't remember their names offhand. Here you go. But their conversations back and forth, I literally did laugh out loud. Just their reactions to things and how they spoke about things. And I did listen to this on audiobook with Neil Gaiman reading it, and it just made it funnier, hearing the dryness of the one and the other one being kind of slimy sounding and just kind of a creep. And so they're going after her, and then Richard Mayhew goes down to London below, ends up in London below with Door, and he helps her try to figure out things. And they meet a ton of different characters. The Count is quite an interesting character. He knows things, and he has a way of handling himself, and he's very well known, and he was a fun character to get to know. So basically, it's just the journey of Richard Mayhew and Door trying to find out who killed the family and who's after her and take care of them. Also, and that's it on that book. That's the basic plot. Coraline. Coraline is a children's book, and it has a creep factor that I think if I had read it when I was younger, I would have been creeped out, but I'm also very easily scared, so I'll put that out. I think a lot of children would be able to handle it. For me, I cried throughout all of E.T. the very first time I saw it, and I have never seen it all the way through ever since, and that's been many moons. So But there is a slight creep factor, but it's not like a super deep creep factor to this. Storyline is Coraline moves into a new house. There are neighbors below her, 2 sweet older ladies, and then upstairs there's a gentleman who is training rats to do tricks. And she's bored, school hasn't started, mom is busy doing her thing, dad's busy doing his thing, she's an only child, and she goes into a room and she finds a door, and she goes through that door, and she goes into another world where there's another mother and another father. They have buttons for eyes, and things are the same, but they're different. Long story short, real mom, real dad are kidnapped by other mother, other father, and she has to try to free them. And there's some other people that she's trying to help out as well. And in the other world, it's fun because she's trying to solve these things to be able to free her parents and these other people. And she kind of has to use her mind. And it's just an odd little world and different. And so it's the same, but it's different. And so she basically, you know, has to figure out how to free them and everything. So that's the story of Coraline. Now, characters. Ocean at the End of the Lane, I don't feel like the characters were very deep at all. I feel like this was a much more plot-driven book than character-driven book. Letty was a lot of fun. She's kind of this carefree girl and lives with the knowledge of magic and other worlds and things. So it makes her a little quirky, and that was fun. But you don't really get any in-depth of her or the boy, which I can't remember. I don't recall his name ever. I'm sure his name was said, but I don't remember. And her grandmother and her mom were just these sweet little people, but there wasn't much depth to them, you know, because the story is really what's telling, you know, driving the story forward. So I don't feel like there was a lot of character development at all with Ocean at the End of the Lane. Neverwhere, there were definitely much more development. You have Richard Mayhew, who's just this kind of simple guy at the beginning, and by the end, you know, he's doing things that he never thought he would do, and he ends up loving London Below. And Dor, she's this very tough, yet in some ways fragile character, you know, but she's having to be tough because of the things that happen to her family, and then because she's being chased. And so she puts on this tough exterior, but she just wants to for me, she just wants to be loved and happy and to stop being chased. The Count is quite the character. He kind of has this arrogance, and the only character I could think of off the top of my head was, you know, Prince Humperdinck in The Princess Bride, and he is always dressed really elegantly type situation, while the Count has a cape that is quite distinguished and it just fits him right, and he's kind of known for this coat, and he just carries himself a certain way. He kind of reminds me of a Prince Humperdinck, but not in the snooty way, just in the kind of cool, sophisticated, like, I got this, I know what I'm doing, I know people type situation. I'm not good at being hip like him. So the Count was a lot of fun, and there was some bearded guy, and he had a few marbles loose, and I would have liked to have delved more into his character. It makes sense why more of his character wasn't shared about or developed, but I enjoyed him. And just overall, the characters that you meet within the book are a lot of fun, because you're living in London Below, and I'm talking about characters instead of world building. Okay, so I'll talk more about world building, but the characters that you meet within London Below, the world again is just a little bit off, and so like it just creates this fun little atmosphere, yet because it's off, there's also weird things that are happening that are kind of creepy at times too. So I feel like the characters were deeper in this book, but they're not fleshed out as deep as other books I've read. Like, I feel like Fitz, and I know not everybody loves Fitz, but Fitz in Assassin's Apprentice, I feel like you get to know a lot more of his inner thinking and feelings and stuff. That's not really what happens a lot in Neverwhere, but you do get that a little bit, or quite a bit, with like Richard Mayhew and Dor. The other side characters, not so much. But I feel like those characters within the book were well fleshed out, and they were a lot of fun to get to know. Coraline, it's a children's book, so I feel with children's books, characters don't always tend to be fully fleshed out, but I feel like she was written well, and she was like a full child. Like, you see her being bored out of her mind and feeling like her parents aren't paying attention to her, and she just wants their attention. And, you know, when you're told don't touch the stove, you're gonna go touch the stove, you know, so because your parents don't want you to get burned. I feel like that's how she was with the sword, because once she went over there, she didn't want to go, but she had to. And, you know, she sees the appeal of the other mother, other father at first, but realizes it ain't all it's cracked up to be. But then I feel like her child mind and her way of doing things helps her figure out the puzzles that she needs to figure out to be able to save her parents and the other people in the book. And I feel like that's how a kid would kind of view the situation she was in. It was a lot of fun. The other characters, there wasn't a lot of huge depth to them because they weren't the main characters. It was all about Coraline and the situation she was in. So as far as characters are concerned, Caroline, I think, was very well done within this book and this story. Okay, the next thing, world building. World building. Okay, Ocean at the End of the Lane. There's the boy's house, there's Letty's house, and the field in between them, and that's like the whole setting of the world. There isn't really anything outside of that area. So it's a very small world that this book is set in. And it's not super developed. It's simple. Now remember, Ocean at the End of the Lane is a novella, so it's not going to be like a $500 page, I almost said dollar yet, page book where you kind of expand on the world like you would in like Aragon or Assassin's Apprentice or things like that. It's a small area, and so you have the boy's house and you have Letty's house, and those things, when he's describing them, are well described. Letty's house was a lot of fun. His house was kind of basic, yet there was a lot of tension within the home once the bad thing is let out. And I think the best part for the world building was once that bad thing was let out into the world, kind of how it darkened his world and made it a very unsafe place. And I did like that. Okay, world building as far as Neverwhere. You're not in London above very much, and it's just London. It is what it is. London below is a whole other story. And I feel like Gaiman did a great job in describing this other world. You have them traveling through tunnels and riding on subways, and there's even a market that's a traveling market. So you have to find out where that market is going to be able to go and purchase whatever you need, or to meet whoever you need, or gather whatever information you're needing. And so the market, I think, was one of my favorite aspects of the book. It shows up a couple of times, and I liked it because it was just so odd. The characters that were there, the things that people were buying and selling, just were like the London above's leftovers and things that were forgotten, you know, shoes and lost keys, and I don't even remember everything. And it was just our world kind of flipped upside down, and Leia wants to go outside, and she's very angry we're not doing that. So if you hear her, I apologize. So that was the fun aspect of it, and because it's London below, where you're in the tunnels and the subway, and you're dealing with rats, and you're dealing with a creature that is kind of like in ROUS from The Princess Bride, where rodents of unusual size. It was one of those types of things that are in there, and so that creates the suspense of like, when are you going to come across this rodent? Does it really exist? Like, how do you defeat it if it does exist? And creating this fear of like, when am I going to come across it, and is it as bad as people say, and stuff. And just the way that they get around in this world is different than how we would get around in this world, and it was a lot of fun to visit. I love how it was just it was more than just slightly tweaked. It was tweaked from the world that we know, and it made it darker than our world, because we don't live like in tunnels and things like that. But it also made it fun in that what we would think is things to be tossed away or things that have no value were the things that were worth value and things that people wanted down there. So I enjoyed this world a lot. Coraline. Coraline is a lot like Ocean in the fact that it's set in a very specific location and it doesn't travel outside of that location. This all takes place at her house and in the land around the home, and that's it. So you're not traveling to any other crazy location, you just travel to another world, but that world is set at the same location, her house and the land around it. The story where the real, I'm going to say just the real Coraline and her family is a typical house, right? It's a flat, so you have two sweet ladies below, you have this older gentleman with a bunch of rats he's training to do tricks. You could probably find that anywhere. The rat thing, maybe not so much, but you have your neighbors above and below you. You have land around to go and explore, and there's nothing crazy about it. It's just your house. But when she goes and she travels to the other world and meets other mother, other father, it's once again a world where everything's slightly tweaked. And this one is tweaked less than in Neverwhere, where London Below is tweaked quite a bit from the real world. And it's just enough so that she knows things are off. I mean, other mother, other father having buttons for eyes is a big clue that things are not the same here. But the way that he describes how things are different, and how things shift, especially when she's trying to save her parents and the other people. You know, there's dogs at a show and they're clapping and they're enjoying themselves, and it's just kind of this weirdness and stuff. And you know, there's the mice, you know, doing their thing. So it was a fun world, yet creepy at the same time. There's, you know, scary things that she has to go and face and do in order to save her parents and the other people in the book. So it was a simple world, but hey baby, she really wants to go outside. But it, you know, the other world being tweaked just the way that it was appropriate for the book, and I felt like it was a good tweak. Now, I forgot to rank characters. Who did I like the least, characters-wise? Ocean at the End of the Lane. I don't feel like there was much development. My favorite character in the book was Letty. Then, my next favorite set of characters, or my second favorite set of characters would probably have to be Coraline, just because I like Coraline, but and the other characters were fine. I just don't, there wasn't as much to them. And then, so obviously my favorite as far as characters is concerned was Neverwhere. I felt like there were a lot of interesting characters, both good, bad, and a little bit of crazy, or a lot of crazy, and so that made the book a lot of fun for me. So characters, for me, Neverwhere has the best characters. World building. Obviously, I think it's clear. Oh, well, maybe not so clear. Ocean was, for me, the least interesting and intriguing in some respects, although once the evil thing comes into the world, does make it more interesting, but it's not enough. It wasn't enough for me, so it was my least favorite out of the three. My next favorite would be, again, Coraline. It was tweaked just enough when she went to the other world that made it fun and interesting and creepy, and kind of, because things don't work the same way there as in our world, it gave it that twist that it needed. So obviously my favorite world was Neverwhere. There's just something about this London Below that I really loved and I want to see more of, and their way of thinking and the way of doing things and the way of speaking at times was just so different. It's like the same but different, if that makes sense. And so world building overall for me would be Neverwhere. Pacing, let's see. Ocean. I was encouraged by Chas, and let me say this. Ocean at the End of the Lane is Bookish Chas's favorite book, like #1 all-time favorite book. And I don't know why. I'm going to be honest, I don't know why. We've had discussions. So, he encouraged, I'll get back to that in enjoyment. He encouraged me to listen to Neil Gaiman's audiobook of Ocean at the End of the Lane, and it's actually Neil Gaiman reading the book, so I did. And it was torture. It was absolute torture. And I did it immersively, so I was reading along with the audiobook, but I would find myself reading ahead because it was just so painfully slow. I even sped it up to right before he became a chipmunk, and it still was just painful for me. And about halfway through the book, I stopped the audiobook and I just read the book, and it did get much better for me. But overall, I still did not enjoy it. Like, the pacing was just, slow. Painfully slow. I kept waiting for something. Like, when the evil comes in the world, yes, it's there, but the way that it's told, there's not this immediate danger. There's not, it just didn't grab me. I felt like the story just dragged and it was never going to end. It did not feel like a novella to me. It felt like a 500-page book with the pacing on it, and that's just me. I will put this caveat on it that maybe if I had just read the book and not started out with the audiobook, it would not have been as difficult for me, and I wouldn't feel like the pacing was so bad. But I did listen to the audiobook at the beginning, and that was really, really rough. It was really hard for me, and I did not enjoy it at all. So pacing for Ocean, for me, was painfully slow. Neverwhere, I did mostly immersive. I did about half and half with immersive and just reading it. And Neil Gaiman also does read this book, and this one wasn't as bad. I actually enjoyed it, and he kind of does some different voices for the characters, especially the two bad guys, and because one of them is just very blunt, kind of like a Edward Monster, Mr. Monster. Yeah, Mr. Monster, picture name here. He kind of just talked and, you know, was very matter of fact and didn't really have any highs or lows. He was kind of monotone-ish. And then the other guy was just this creepy, slimy, like you knew the other guy wasn't good, but like this guy just had the slime effect to his voice and his character as well. And so I enjoyed that. And the pacing, it kind of starts out a little slow, but once you get to London Below, it picks up because there's an urgency to try to get to certain places or to talk to certain people. And then there's, you know, some fighting that happens, and at the end it picks up. It's not the fastest pace, but it's a good pace. There's enough there to keep it moving forward at a good click. So there's that. Coraline, I felt like this for me was the quickest pacing, but that may just be because it's a children's book, so it's written slightly different than the other two books. And I didn't do this one immersively at all. And maybe that has a factor on it too. Maybe, and I've come to the conclusion Neil Gaiman is not anything that he reads is not a book I should listen to as far as an audiobook. He's not a good narrator. That's the word I was thinking of. He's not a good narrator for me. I know Chas loves him. Chas has said if he, you know, I would listen to anything that he were to read, my grocery list, anything, right? And I'm like, no. So I do have to admit that maybe the pacing was thrown off for me because of this because Neil Gaiman was narrating it. I don't want to blame it completely on that, but I do think that plays a factor because I didn't do that at all at Coraline. Maybe that's why I felt like the pacing was quicker. But it's also a short children's book, so it's kind of got to move from one thing to the next in a fairly quick fashion. And so, you know, I felt like her solving the puzzles type pieces or finding the keys that she needs happens quickly and fairly simply and easily, but it makes sense because of the type of book that it is. But it's still an enjoyable read. And so it was, for me, the quickest pace of all three. So obviously, for pacing, Coraline is going to be number one. And I think there's a couple different factors that create that situation. The second one for me would be Neverwhere. It's still a quick pace, but it's not, I don't feel like it's as fast as Coraline. And obviously, Ocean at the End of the Lane is dead last. It wasn't good. Okay, endings. I'll make this quick because I have my timer for this video covered up, but I'm sure it's getting long. And so far I don't feel like I really have to edit anything out, so I'm going to keep going. Ending. I'm not going to share how any of them end because it's spoilers and I don't want to do that to you if you have not read these books. But basically, out of the endings that were my favorites, number 3, Ocean at the End of the Lane, it wasn't bad. I want to just say this. As far as the ending is concerned for Ocean, it wasn't bad. It had... and I can't remember if I said this earlier in this video or not. It has this piece where you question if he remembers the incident. I think I said this earlier. You kind of question whether or not he remembers this incident when he's away from the pond area. And so that was kind of an interesting thing. And there was another aspect that I know I haven't mentioned at all that's kind of interesting, and it pops up in my mind every so often, so it does make me kind of wonder, like, it leaves open the possibility for a book for something else to happen. So, but it wasn't my favorite out of the 3, obviously. It was my least favorite. The next favorite, or the second book in this thing would be Coraline. I enjoyed the ending. It was a bit quick for me, but it's a children's book, and so the ending makes sense. It was a good ending and a fun ending. So there you go. Neverwhere. I enjoyed Neverwhere. It ended how I thought it would, but not... Okay, so ultimately it ends how I thought it would end, but the way it happened wasn't what I was expecting. So that was a fun piece. And so ending. There you go. Enjoyment. Can we all guess which book was not my favorite and which one I enjoyed the least out of the three? Well, if you have guessed Ocean at the End of the Lane, my friend, you have guessed correctly. I did not really enjoy this book. Chas, as I have said, enjoys this book. We have discussed it. I've said, why do you love this book the way that you do? For him, I know part of it's nostalgia. This boy grows up in a small town, and Chas grew up in a small town, so there's that nostalgia type thing. But because he doesn't really travel, for me, I grew up in a semi-small town and for several years, and for me, because you don't really travel outside of the boy's home and Letty's home and the field in between, I mean, I understand there's like nothing around them, but you're not going into town and like there's only one main street and no stop signs or stoplights. I didn't get the small town feel. And Chas and another person have also said that it's very emotional. It's an emotional book that evokes a lot of emotion for them. And I missed it. I didn't feel super afraid of the bad thing. I was sad when a sad thing happened, but I felt a lot sadder with other books, and it didn't really, like, I felt the sadness, and I felt like, oh, this is a scary thing, but I wasn't scared myself. And so I did feel joy and happiness, and when, Letty's interacting with her grandmother and her mother, that was like a fun little piece for me, but the rest of it it really fell flat. And maybe I feel like there might be some factors to it. One, the audiobook piece that I mentioned earlier, and two, I feel like maybe I hyped this book so much up in my mind because it's Chas's favorite book and because we're such good friends that I really expected a lot of this book, and it didn't meet it at all. I feel like this book, if it was a longer book, if it wasn't a short novella, and understand there's a whole reason why, so if you want to know why it's a novella and how this book came apart, I suggest you do the research. This video is long enough, I'm not going to get into it. I feel like if he did make this a book like the length of a Neverwhere and fleshed out some things and just built a bigger world and did more character building, I would have been more invested in the story, and I would have been more invested in the lives of these characters, and I just wasn't. So I think there were several different factors of why this book just wasn't there. But I also have tried to step back from the audiobook piece and the Chas piece and say, would I, if those things weren't factored, how would I feel about the book? And I still really feel like this book would not have been a wow book for me. I feel like I still would feel like it's a blah book. It's not that great. And I feel bad because I know some people, they absolutely love this book, but that's my opinion and my opinion only. So if this is your favorite book or your favorite Neil Gaiman book, I'm happy for you. I really am. And I honestly do wish I loved this book more. I don't. Chas typically does a reread of the book every year. So I've told him I think that I will reread it with him next year and read at my own pace and not do the audiobook, and see if I can see a little bit more, if not a lot more, of what he sees in the book. So, but enjoyment level, bottom of the barrel for me was bottom of the ocean for me was Ocean at the End of the Lane. Next book. And I've kind of gone back and forth between Coraline and Neverwhere. But I think overall, when I put all the different pieces together, I think my second favorite would be Coraline. It's a simple kids book, and it was a fun, enjoyable read. I genuinely enjoyed reading this book. So, and in some respects, I enjoyed it a little bit more than Neverwhere, but I think when you put all the different things together, Coraline is my second favorite. I would read this one again. I don't have a physical copy. I borrowed it from the library, so I would want to get the fun edition with all the illustrations in it, and one day when we have kids in our home, I would love to read this book to them. It would be a fun little read, and so I enjoyed it. So, my favorite book out of the three would be Neverwhere. This book was just a ton of fun to read. Like I've said, I love the Count. I even love Dor, her abrasiveness at time, and I can see she's just built up this wall to a certain effect because she's had to. And Richard Mayhew, he's just so completely overwhelmed with London Below at the beginning that he, bless his poor little heart, he's just trying so hard, and he doesn't know which way is up from down anymore, and everything is literally sideways for him, and he's just trying to understand, and he wants to help Dor, and in the end, you have the marketplace and just those different characters, and the bearded guy, and the Count is just, he's so suave. Maybe that's a good word for him. Hi, Leia. She's really wanting outside. And so I enjoyed all the characters except for like the slimy, creepy guy and the Edward Munster, character. But the thing is that I've enjoyed them to a certain extent when they were like talking back and forth, and they said things that made me laugh. So like, I didn't necessarily like some of the creepy stuff they did, but I enjoyed their conversations and how they talked to each other and spoke, and sometimes it was riddle-like, and that was fun for me. So, let me move back to the middle here. Okay, no, I'm not off center. And guess what? I don't have to edit this, which is amazing because I actually did this video yesterday, and then when I went, when I went to go edit it, because I was off center, I was looking in a completely wrong spot, and it looked absolutely horrible, so I've had to redo this video. So, I'm glad. I'm just not going to edit it. It is what it is. Let's see what time I'm at. 41 minutes, dear Lord. Okay, so, anyway, I'm not going to edit it. I think it's good. I discuss all the points. We'll see how many views it gets. I don't know. Well, I think I discussed these things well. I'm happy with it, despite it being as long as it is. So, and there was a lot to discuss, and maybe I could have taken out, discussing pacing or whatever, but I didn't, and it is what it is. So I feel a million times better about this video than I did about the one that I did yesterday, even though this is going to be way longer and not edited. I think I've articulated much better how I felt. I don't know if that tells you how bad yesterday's was. I don't know. Well, it is what it is. So, anyways, here's the promised video. It is done. I'm happy with it. I'm glad it is done. This has been a video that I wanted to do, and then when I went to go do it, I was completely intimidated by it. If you have any pointers, excuse me, I got a cough. Sorry for that minor interruption. If you have any pointers on maybe how to make this video longer, or shorter, or like how I might be able to condense things, or just your overall input on this video, I would love it. If you agree with me on any of these points and you want to discuss it, do it in the comments below. If you disagree with me, if you love Ocean at the End of the Lane and you think I'm totally off base, tell me. Let's discuss it. Tell me why you think I'm wrong. I want to know. I still really want to love this book. I just can tell you, this will never be my #1 favorite book ever. But do I leave the door open for me to like it more than I do at this current moment? Absolutely. So let's have discussions below about your thoughts on my thoughts about these 3 books. That is all I have. So yesterday was Thanksgiving, so for us here in the U.S., so I hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving, a safe and healthy Thanksgiving, and that you were able to spend time with family and or friends. And for the rest of you and the rest of the world that could be possibly watching this, I hope you had a good Thursday. What can I say? It wasn't Thanksgiving for you, so hope you had a happy Thursday. So my next video is going to be next week, and that is going to be a update of what I've actually read in the month of November and a look at what I would like to read in the month of December. And I'm actually really excited. This is the first time where I'm doing like a concentrated like Christmas winter type read for the month of December, and I have some fun books that I'm really looking forward to. Some of them I've heard a lot about. 1 or 2 of them I've heard very little about, so it's going to be a lot of fun for me to make that video. And so, because I'm now at 45 minutes, I am going to sign off and say thank you for spending your time watching my video. I know you could be doing other things, like eating turkey leftovers or taking a nap because you have the turkey hangover. You could be doing Black Friday shopping, which, good Lord help you if you did that. Or you could be reading a book. So I really do appreciate all the time you take to watch my 45-minute video, and I would love it if you did all the YouTubey things, like give it a like if you liked this video, and subscribe to this channel if you would like to see more content. And if you want to know when the content comes out, hit that little bell for the bell notification. Also, I'm sitting at 49 subscribers solid for like a week now, and I still cannot announce what my little surprise brain series thingy is stuck in my head, and I really would like to share it and get it out. So if you have not subscribed, please do. If you think your friends or family would enjoy this channel, please let them know and have them subscribe so we can discuss the series idea that I really want to do, and I would love to hit the 100 subscribers by the end of the year so that we can start the new year out with the series idea. So please subscribe. I would love it. Anyways, thank you for spending your time with me, and until next time, go read a good book. Hello, fellow lovers of books. Book lovers? Well, I know book lovers, but like lovers of books, because it's more than one person. I don't know. I'll just say book lovers. Such a dork. Am I one day gonna regret that I wore this sweater for this video? Probably. Do I care at the moment? No, because it's comfy and bright and cheery, and I melt into the walls. This part of me melts into the wall. Oh my goodness. Okay, yes, I'm gonna be throwing in Coraline. I read this one for Easter, Halloween. I don't even know where Easter came from.